Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to receive your Chairman, Vice Chairman and Deputy Chief Executive.
Thank you. Please remain standing whilst my chaplain leads us in prayer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you will excuse the Christmas jumper. I've just come from one event and off to another Christmas event in a moment. I brought with me a little illustration. I will lead us in a moment of reflection in just a moment. I think in the last week we have had 10 Christingle services. And at each of them we have celebrated what it is this time of year to be able to pause, reflect, take moments to acknowledge the things we're thankful for. I'm not going to light this because we'll all be on the car park in a few seconds if the alarm goes off. But at each of them we've given everybody a candle. And as we've lit the candle, we've reminded ourselves that each of us, whatever our background, our gifts, our experience, our age, we can add a little bit of light and hope to the world around us. This little light of mine, I'll let it shine. And thank you all for your service this year. I'm going to lead us in a moment of reflection together. Shall we be still? And so we call to mind the things we're thankful for, the things that have brought joy, the things we're proud of, the difference that's been made. We call to mind the things that remain unresolved, the disappointments and the sadness. Almighty God, we thank you that you know the ups and downs, the things that bring light and hope and peace, and the things that cause us worry and concern and sadness. We pray this night for all those we represent, all those we seek to serve. We pray that you will help each of us to shine a light as we go about our business. And Lord, I ask for your blessing upon this meeting and using a traditional prayer of blessing. May the joy of the angels, the eagerness of the shepherds, the perseverance of the wise men, the obedience of Joseph and Mary, and the peace of the Christ child be with us and our communities this Christmas and always. Amen. God bless you, and I hope you have a good meeting. Take care.
Thank you. Please be seated, and if anyone feels the need, feel free to remove your jackets. Our heating systems are doing us well this evening. We start with declarations of interests. Do we have any? I see none, so we go next on to apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillors Arnold, Hartley, Knight and Tasker.
Thank you, and seeing no other hands rising, we go next on to minutes of the previous meeting. Unless anyone has a correction or an issue with these, I'm happy to propose them. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. This brings us next on to, all those in favour?
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. And now that brings us next on to my chairman's announcements. So since our last meeting in October, civic invites and duties have become much more festive. I've been carolling and carouselling around Wychavon and the wider Worcestershire. I'd like to give a special mention to Wychavon's Festival of Brass. It was hugely attended by local and far-flung brass fans and was very welcoming to attend. So I recommend all join our chairman in attending next year. It was an honour to have a front row position again for Remembrance Day in Droitwich. One of my favourite days of the year to see such overwhelming support from our communities. Unfortunately, I could not be present across the entire district at once, so I give my thanks to Vic Allison and Councillor Mark Googe for representing Wychavon in Pershore and Evesham, respectively. That seems a lot of feedback. Our Wychavon teams held Local Democracy Day for a third year with an even greater attendance of schools, each presenting to us in an excellent way to give great insight to what affects their lives. Though we saw a better spread of votes than our previous years, the outcome was the same, with Councillor Rob Adams being elected the President of Wychavon for the day. Finally, Wychavon was supported by some of our housing provider partners to host a housing summit, with thanks to our housing portfolio holder, Councillor Rick Deller, for starting the search for innovative ways to address Wychavon's side of the National Housing Challenge. Though the problem is not solved, bringing the right people to the right room appears the right start. Thank you. We go next on to public participation, of which there is none. Leading us next to items 7 and 8, being petitions and notices of motion, of which we have also received none. Ever swiftly on, we go to reports to the council. Item 9, being the polling district and polling place review. Do we have any questions or a proposer? Councillor Chris Day.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to propose this. This is a statutory requirement of the Council to consider polling districts, mainly driven by the County Council divisions and the changes to the boundaries that have been made. This has gone through a full public consultation. There's also been consultation with individual division and ward members. So with that, I'm very happy to propose.
Can I say, there is one change I think you need to make with Elmley Castle. It's down as not as Breeden Hill. It should be Breeden Hill. Elmley Castle should be the ward. On page, I think, 14. It's the split one, but it's mostly Elmley Castle, which is mostly in Breeden Hill.
Okie doke. Just a moment. Okie doke. So, with that amendment, that'll be looked into. With that in hand, do we have a seconder? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, taking the comment by Councillor Hardman into account, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you. Unless I've missed any other hands, we go to the vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
And that's unanimous. Thank you. This brings us next on to recommendations from the Executive Board and committees and panels. Item 10, recommendations from Executive Board, starting with the budget. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. As per my comments at the Executive Board, I recommend to the Council the adoption of the revised revenue budgets for 2024-25. The draft revenue money plan that was at Appendix B of the Executive Board papers with the projected base budgets for the coming year, and the latest capital programme and capital money plan taking us to 2029-2030. I would remind members that these are draft budgets at this time. We await the local government settlement, which is due sometime in the next week. So just before Christmas, we'll find out just how much the government is or is not going to give us, and that will lead us to revise the budgets in order to bring forward the final proposals at our meeting in February, at which point we will adopt the budget for the coming year. I move the recommendations.
And I believe we have Councillor Day to second.
Thank you, Chairman. I was not going to add anything other than that I do second the motion. Thank you.
And with no other hands going up, we go to the vote. Could I have all those in favour? And that's taken unanimously. Thank you. This brings us to the next part of this item, the Lido Park Droitwich Spa water plate replacement. Councillor Hardman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to propose that we put in the final water park for Droitwich. It be separate from the Lido. It be free access, and that will now mean then we have Pershore, Evesham, and then Droitwich have their own fantastic play area. So I hope you will follow and agree to this. Thank you.
An excellent addition to our Wychavon leisure facilities. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chairman. More than happy to second this recommendation. It'll essentially open up the space a lot more, move it away from the main Lido site, and it will massively improve the Lido Park and add to the character of the area, so happy to second.
Wonderful. Seeing no other hands going up, we take this to the votes. Could I have all those in favour, please? Another unanimous vote. Thank you. Bringing us next on to the Parks and Public Open Spaces Security Improvements. Back to Councillor Hardman.
Sorry, it's me again. This one is for money to make our parks and open spaces stop people getting onto them when we don't want them to get onto them. It would be everything from people putting metal pavements, metal fences up, to rocks to stop cars and vehicles going onto the areas. We've had problems in the past, and therefore we're going to put these into place to stop people going onto our parks we don't want to. So I hope you recommend this.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Della.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a very sensible approach. We celebrate our green spaces in Wychavon, so I'm happy to second.
Excellent. We have a hand at the back.
Thank you. My ward, Evesham South, has suffered quite a few of these incidents of almost, you might say, an invasion onto the open spaces. So I'm very grateful that this is finally coming forward. Thank you.
Excellent. No other hands going up. We take this to the vote. All those in favour? Another unanimous vote. Thank you. Taking us to the final part of this item, the path improvement works for Pulley Lane. Another one over to Councillor Hardman.
This is my last one, you're lucky to know. Pulley Lane, we're going to be raising the start again. There's lots of flooding in the area in Droitwich, and we are going to be making sure the path is usable. It won't be affecting other areas which have flooding, but we're going to make the path usable because it's very, very well used path, and we don't want people to use the roads because they're dangerous around there. So I hope you back this one as well. Thank you.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Morris.
Yes, and I fully support this and thank Councillor Hardman for bringing it forward. It's a path that really links the Worcester Road up to the new housing estates at Yew Tree, so it provides good transport all the way down to get buses and connectivity. I would say as well that Highways today have done some work on Pulley Lane from their perspective to try and sort the drainage out. So this is our part of it on the path within our park area to support that as well. So thank you. I'm happy to second.
Wonderful. And unless there are any questions or comments, we'll go to the vote. Could we have all those in favour, please? A continued streak of unanimity. This takes us on to item 11, recommendations from Licensing Committee. Starting with the Gambling Act 2005, review of Statement of Principles. Councillor Goode.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, two items from the Licensing Committee, the first of which is the Gambling Act. We're required by law to review this every 3 years. Our 3 years ends in January, so we're now about to hopefully adopt the new policy. There are no substantive changes to the policy. All that we've done is update things like dates, population figures for the district, and also slightly amended the list of consultees to include some other industry bodies and organisations that deal with the harms that can be caused by gambling. So I'd like to propose this to be adopted.
Excellent. Councillor Bowden.
Yeah, and as there's very few changes to it really. In fact, there's no changes as I said apart from dates and standard things like that. So I'm happy to second this.
Wonderful. If there are no other hands raising, we will go to the vote. Could I have all those in favour?
Unanimous.
Another unanimous vote. Thank you. Bringing us to the second part of this item. Back to Councillor Googe.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This second one is pavement licensing. This is a new thing. You will recall that during the COVID pandemic, businesses which sold food and drink were allowed temporarily permission to put tables and chairs out on pavements so that people could eat and drink in a kind of more virus-safe way. That turned out to be so successful that the government decided to continue that. So we now have a system in place for licensing chairs and tables from food and drink establishments out on the pavement. So we are now required to adopt our draft policy on pavement licensing, which you have hopefully all read, but I am prepared to take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, I will propose that we adopt that as read.
An excellent way to support our businesses in a considered way. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a needed policy, so it's good to see it coming forward. The one question I have is who is responsible, in terms of enforcement, who within the council is going to enforce if there's a issue with a licence or somebody not having a licence for street furniture?
As with all licensing responsibilities, this will be handled by Worcestershire Regulatory Services. They have already got the team in place to start doing this work as soon as all the policies are approved and everything was ready to go.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Yep, and again I'm very happy to second this proposal. Thank you.
Excellent. And with no other hands raising, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous once more. Thank you. This brings us on to item 12, Executive Board Report. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Chairman. There's been just one meeting of the Executive Board since the last meeting of the Council, and that meeting took place on the 20th of November. At that meeting, we received some excellent presentations from the chairs of our 4 advisory panels, and I would like to thank Councillor Emma Sims, Councillor Linda Robinson and Councillor Mark Googe, and all the members of our advisory panels for the excellent work that they have done and continue to do for us. We also considered the following items of business: the 2025-26 budget, the Treasury Management mid-year update, the We Are Wychavon Performance Report, April to September 2024, the removal of parking charges at Crown Meadow in Evesham, the water play replacement at Lido Park in Droitwich Spa, the security improvements for our parks and open spaces, and path improvements works at Pulley Lane in Droitwich Spa. The recommendations in respect to the budget, the water play, security and path improvements have now just been approved by the Council. Thank you all very much. And I'm delighted that we continue to deliver for our residents and have committed to a further £890,000 of capital expenditure in respect of the latter 3 items. In terms of the 2025-26 budget, the Audit Committee and Overview and Scrutiny Committee will both have a further chance to look at our proposals before they're considered by full Council at the Budget and Tax Setting meeting, which will take place in February. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no questions, we go on to item 13, Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor Homer.
Thank you, Chairman. Since the last council meeting, the ONS committee have met once. At that meeting, we had a lengthy and detailed discussion on litter and its blight in our district. Concerns were raised regarding FCC street cleansing activities, and the committee was assured that officers had taken on board our comments and would meet with FCC to relay them. An update will follow. I would like to place on record our thanks to those who run and volunteer in anti-litter groups up and down the district. because without them, I think we'd be facing a much bigger issue. Following that item, we reviewed the newly worked We Are Wychavon report, previously known as the Signal Success report. Many changes have been made to make the report more approachable and easier to engage with. I'm pleased that as part of this reworked report, the committee will now see much more business as usual KPIs, which will allow us to monitor the daily activity of this council as well as the promises that we have made as part of our strategy. And we also had an update from the Budget Scrutiny Group, which has been meeting regularly throughout this last month. The new face-to-face format, along with officers and executive members attending, there is a feeling that this arrangement has had a positive impact. And as we look ahead to the new year, our first meeting in 2025, we will have Platform Housing attending. And I would welcome any member of the council to join that meeting and to contribute if they wish to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Crump.
Can I just add to what Charlie's just said regarding the We Are Wychavon new report, and just give our thanks to Sherry and team and anybody else that was involved, because I know there's been a lot of hard work involved in that, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I see any other hands going up there? In that case, we'll go next on to item 14, Plan Committee. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. This will be a short report. Surprisingly to some on the committee, we've only had 2 meetings since the last council meeting, and totaling 10 applications, ranging from a one live-work application to major developments, 168 houses, I think, in Pinvin. The site visits we undertake are excellent, and thank you to the officers for arranging it. We only have time to come back and eat our sandwiches and have some training before the committee members, so there's some pluses in belonging to the planning committee, the sandwiches, that is. Thanks to Councillor Andrew Dyke for stepping in as chair on one of the items last time, and to the committee for their increasing contribution to the debates. We should be very well perfect in a couple of years, I think. And also thanks to Kieran Power, Carl Brace and Heather Peachy for their support at the meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And this takes us next on to item, unless there are any hands going that I missed, this takes us next on to item 15, Licensing Committee. Councillor Googe.
Thank you, Chairman. We've already dealt with the 2 main items regarding licensing. We've met twice since the last full council meeting, which is a little unusual. We don't seem to meet that often. But as well as the 2 substantive things we've already voted on, we've also discussed safeguarding awareness training for taxi and private hire drivers, an update on the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, otherwise known as Martin's Law, which will be coming into force at some point, and also our licensing fees for hackney and private hire drivers, and finally the Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which is another one wending its way through Parliament at the moment. And licensing subcommittees have met twice, dealing with a total of 10 vehicles and 1 driver.
Thank you. And unless anyone has any questions on that report, we will go next on to Member Conduct Committee. Councillor Middleborough.
Thank you, Chairman. The Member Conduct Committee has not met since the last council meeting, and the next 2 scheduled meetings of the Member Conduct Committee are on the 10th of February and the 7th of April.
Thank you. This takes us next on to item 17, Councillor Adrian Hardman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the Audit Committee met on the 22nd of November and considered the budget that has been recommended by Council tonight. It also considered the Treasury management and discussed how well the team are doing in managing the assets that the Council have. We also reviewed our internal audit process, and I'm pleased to be able to report to Council that staffing has been recruited and they are catching up on the slight backlog of work that they had, and therefore I'm expecting by the end of March they will be nearly up to pace. Lastly, the people tell me that audit is dull and boring. Well, let me assure you that when your external auditor appears in front of you as a committee, having disclaimed the last 3 years of accounts, it does get quite interesting. It is extremely disappointing to me that the external auditors have behaved in such a reckless way since our officers submitted the accounts on time, and that is not in any shape or the fault of our officer team here at Wychavon that this very disappointing result has taken place, where the last 3 years of accounts have been disclaimed by our external auditors. It is solely due to the lack of capacity by Ernst & Young, or EY as they call themselves. Now, not unsurprisingly, we stressed how deeply unhappy we were with their performance and how we will be disputing their fees with the public sector audit body. And I do find it pretty astounding, really, because I did take the trouble to have a look at EY, and I saw that their audit partner last year was paid £723,000. Well, from my point of view, and indeed from everybody else in the public sector, I would suggest that that was money that he did not in any shape or form deserve. Our new auditors, as it's, were present, and they explained how it's unfortunately going to take us a few years before we get assurance back to the standard the people of Wychavon deserve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on that? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. I should just perhaps clarify for members that the situation that we find ourselves in is not unique to Wychavon. It is a situation that the vast majority of local authorities across the country find themselves. Unfortunately, our external auditors allowed themselves to get to a position where they did not have the resources available to be able to complete the audits, despite being presented with all of the information from the council that we would have expected them to have. They have not completed the audits, and therefore they were given a deadline by the government to finalise all audits, all local government audits across the country as a result of the backlog. In order to meet that deadline, they have simply disclaimed all of the accounts rather than complete and give us a formal view on the state of our accounts. We have received their reports. Their reports give us no cause for concern. They do not indicate that there is anything that they would have found materially problematic in our accounts. But in order to meet the deadline, they have simply disclaimed all of the accounts. It is a very frustrating position that we find ourselves in, but it is not unique to Wychavon, I'm afraid.
Councillor Boatwright Green.
It's going to be a very odd set of circumstances where I'm going to have to back you all up on this one and say absolutely ridiculous situation to be in. In terms of actual paying the bill, I've got to be honest, my view on this is obviously that we shouldn't, and I massively believe we need to do something about that. But as a council, what can we do as a group to make sure we make that incredibly clear that this is unacceptable? Because obviously you'll have complete support in this room that this is not the way it should be. And I think we do need to really convey that to them, that this is not acceptable. And frankly, I don't want to pay the bill at all at this point.
We will be making representations that we think are appropriate to those that need to hear them in respect of the bill. We will no doubt need to await their view in terms of whether bills should be paid and then be able to consider it further. I don't think there's probably too much we can say at this point.
Thank you. If all are satisfied there, Councillor Dyke.
Thank you, Chairman. Just thinking about that for a second. We had a peer review recently. I've not seen any results of that personally yet. So one, when can we expect that? And two, did they pick up this enormous problem? It's all very well to say everybody is in the same boat, but it's unacceptable however you look at it. Thank you.
I think we have an answer from our Chief Exec, Vic Allison.
I was offering to help unless Chris wants to go first. Would you like to go first, Chris? Or? The draft report is now with us. It took a while. We have a draft report which we're now reviewing. Hopefully, as soon as that's finalised, we'll be able to share with members. And as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty certain that there was no reference to external audit issues within the peer challenge draft report.
Thank you. If there are no other hands, then we go next on to item 18, questions from members of the council. I believe we start with a question from Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Chair. As the closing date for resubmission of the SWDPR report is the 31st of December 2024, what is the current situation and can you guarantee it will be submitted in time to the standard required by the inspector?
Thank you. And I believe we have a response from Councillor Middleborough.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question, Councillor Crump. We have now received the draft Worcestershire Strategic Transport Model Report for the South Worcestershire Development Plan Review from Worcestershire County Council and several draft reports from National Highways in relation to the strategic transport network. These reports are being finalised over the next 2 weeks before submission to the Inspectorate. We've also have an updated viability report and are making the final changes to the infrastructure delivery plan to reflect the transport modelling results. The hearing dates for the examination in public are being arranged in March with a reserve week in April. We'll confirm the final dates in due course. So we are well on course for achieving a submission prior to the 31st of December 2024. And this was reported to the South Worcestershire Development Plan Review Group this afternoon.
Thank you. Would you like your follow-up question?
Okay. As a non-executive council member like myself, have not been involved with the latest stages of the SWDPR, can you assure us that no significant changes have been made to the policy that would affect our residents, for example, categories of villages?
There have been no significant changes, although there are technical changes. And whilst the categories of villages may change, they will not in any way significantly change the background papers that this council had when it sent the details and approved the details with the other two councils.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this brings us next on to a question from Councillor J. Tucker.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of, there's certainly some rumours circulating about this. So my question is, what information has Wychavon received, if any, on the government's proposed changes to local government structures? Is it known whether these changes will be imposed with or without consultation?
I believe we have a response from our leader, Councillor Day.
Yes, it's going to be a bit of a frustrating response, I'm afraid. The honest answer is Wychavon has received no specific information. We're aware that a white paper is due shortly. The government has stated that we should receive this before the end of the year. Until we receive this, we are unable to comment further. So thank you for your question, though.
And would you like a follow-up question?
No, I don't think so. I've got a few comments, but no question.
Don't we all? Thank you. Before we go on to the final item of tonight, just a reminder to all, please be sure before the winter break to check your pigeonholes upstairs and to join us at the end of the meeting in the committee rooms for some handmade mince pies and mulled apple juice. This takes us next on to the final item of this agenda, item 19, the council debate. Over to Councillor J. Tucker once more. Councillor Charles Tucker even, apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I note the Freudian slip. First of all, can I say to members that I'm sorry that we haven't got the details actually published in the council debate here. I could say that there was some significant debate and significant negotiation on the precise wording of this flooding debate. And I would like to thank Councillor Day for his very positive input into the motion or the wording of the debate that is on the table tonight. Obviously, the precise wording was in the details which were sent out a few days ago. I'm sorry that they're not on the table. I think it would have been helpful if they had been, but they aren't. I hope you're not, the council will not be bored by me banging on about flooding issues. I think this is about the third or the fourth time I've raised the issue in council in various ways and on various parts of the subject. But it really is one of the hottest issues that we have got in Wychavon in the long term. We all know and we have all seen what's happened with the recent storms. We were very fortunate here in Wychavon not to be dramatically affected by the recent storms, but we have seen how other parts of the country were significantly and badly affected. And everybody by this time will realise how serious the impact of flooding is on individuals and on communities. And I know that several members of the council have got direct experience with their communities in their wards of how this scourge of climate change brought about by climate change is affecting their communities. I'm sure if I mentioned Sedgebarrow, there'll be several people who know all about that, or who recognise how severely they were affected in 2017, I beg your pardon. As I say, this motion or this debate tonight was brought about with a substantial amount of cooperation between myself and Councillor Day, who very much helped in putting together the questions that are there tonight. The three questions which we've got being basically what further steps can be taken by Wychavon District Council and its partners to improve the district's ability to respond to flooding. And secondly, how can the council ensure proactive steps are taken to build sustainable flood defences and drainage in new developments? And thirdly, what plans are in place to engage families and communities to share best practice and take steps to improve their flood resilience? I look forward to positive contributions from other members of the council. I just draw briefly your attention to the specific proposals or suggestions which I have included in the paper. I recognise obviously that tonight is not the time for decisions on budget items, but I hope that these points will be taken account when we come to the detailed budgetary consideration in February. That is, point one is utilising the unallocated capital fund for flood management in our capital budget to identify and develop a scheme for natural flood management. And this is something which has been very beneficial in the case of Sedgebarrow as a result of natural flood management installations and initiatives which have been taken at the top of the River Isborne up near Winchcombe. I also would like the council to consider the possibility of having a small fund for the development of schemes for flood wardens in the at-risk villages, particularly where there are already flood groups active. And I mentioned there are National Flood Forum as good models for this through its network of affiliated flood groups. As regards the proactive steps to build sustainable flood defences and drainage in new developments, I think it is important that we really take account of the proposals in our policies in the SWDPR which do require that proper structured plans be produced which cover the whole of the development and not merely individual major developments which might come along as part of a larger development. So I'm specifically pointing the question at the strategic sites where taking developments on a piecemeal basis as an individual developer comes along would actually not meet the holistic environmental objectives which I believe the council would want to see. Then thirdly, what plans are in place to engage families and communities? Well, there is a really a great need for this. If I may just refer to Pershore, we had a major flood, as many places did, in 2007. And we were very fortunate then to get the Environment Agency to construct a bund which has protected the major part of the area which was affected by flooding. But as I've said before, that bund does not protect to the level of the 2007 flood. And I have great concern that members of the public who live in that area may feel complacent that they are protected by the bund. And it's important that we engage with those people in those areas to ensure that they do bring the flood defences and the property level flood defences, which many of them put in after that flood, that those are maintained so that when and if, and let's hope it never happens, but with flooding these days, most of the things which could happen do happen, and that is that the bund will not protect people to the level of a 2007 flood. And I do worry about complacency, and so I'm suggesting very much that the role of the flood wardens that I've mentioned above to engage with at-risk residents is important to assist them in improving their flood resilience. Thank you, Chairman. I pass it over to the Council.
Thank you. Would anyone wish to speak on this? Councillor Beverley Ardman.
Sorry, I'd like to give some background first on this before I speak. In 1998, there was a capital flood alleviation programme which started up. And then in 2007, we had that major flood. There was 1.2 million, we had, of which 750,000 was Wychavon, and the rest was partners funding it, and parish councils helped fund it. There's also a DEFRA property flood scheme going on, so there is not just us who do that. And they've also given grants to some parishes in the past. We've done about 13 locations with the capital flood programme over the years, and there is about 9 properties were given. Separately, just quickly to say about land drainage, which does help in flooding. Our district is got this only since July to September. We've got 8 cases they managed to close, 9 new ones, and 11 ongoing. And they view applications for planning as well. So they really pushed our team here because they do also cover Malvern Hills and Worcestershire City Council. But going back to this question now, I've got a few comments on it first. I'm not going to answer the question exactly. I wonder whether you believe we should improve our reporting of water issues. When you go on our website, you can report fly tipping by putting a map in and putting an X, and I'd love to see that for water reporting. I don't know if you agree with me or don't agree with me, but I think that's something I would like to consider. I also say I'm fed up with ping pong. I mean by ping pong, I go and see the district about some flooding or water. They say it's county council. You go and see the county council. They say it's district. You go back to district. You go to county council. It's happened quite a lot around our area. I believe that after a certain length of time, maybe 3 months, we then have to go with the county council and we work out who is going to sort this out, because the ping pong keeps happening and I don't like the ping pong at all. Separately, I was also thinking about flooding the last couple of weeks and doing some investigation. I would definitely like to up our grant money and what we spend. I put my name out there. I haven't spoken to anybody else about this, but more money for it. And also seed money to help councils and parish councils for the smaller flooding as well, as because we can't sort out the really big flooding, we won't have that money, but smaller flooding we can help with. So I'd like to consider more money for that. And I know I've gone first, but I'd like to hear everybody else's views, please.
Thank you. We go now to Councillor Dan Birch and then Emma Kersey.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Tucker for bringing this debate forward. We are obviously in a climate crisis, and this councillor announced that a good few years ago that we are in a climate crisis, and we do need to be looking at ways that we can address that. And as part of being in that crisis, we are dealing with more violent weather, and we're seeing flooding occurring a lot more. And just a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure many of us in this room saw what happened over in Tenbury and saw the catastrophic damage that was caused to the community over there. And it was brilliant to see within a week that a good few number of businesses were able to open back up and get training, but there's a lot that weren't. There's a lot that can't afford to go and get new flooring and can't afford to go and buy new stock and can't afford to start trading again. And unfortunately, the flooding will have ruined their livelihoods. And it's important that we look at ways that we can start to combat that. And I think it is about taking proactive steps. It's about dealing with it before the incident occurs. We've got some really good companies now. We've got one over in Hampton Lovett in Councillor Day's ward, Flood Tech, which essentially deal with these sorts of things. They look at ways that you can kit out shops where you essentially raise everything above ground level. You can put resin on the walls and on the floors, which means that essentially stuff just wipes off and wipes clean. It's quite easy to get yourself back up and running again. And it's things like that that we need to be supporting our local businesses with. We need to be ensuring that they've got the right technology in place. I know in Droitwich we had huge issues with flooding for a number of years until only recently, where they put in the correct drainage measures so the high street doesn't flood anywhere near to the same extent that it used to. But if you walk down the high street now, and those who live in Droitwich will know, you walk into most shops and they have sandbags by the door. And that's because they're still worried about the flooding. They still know that it's a risk, and they're still incredibly concerned about their businesses. And it's that constant pressure that they face, just wondering what's going to be happening next. So we need to be supporting our businesses and ensuring that they have the funds necessary through grant funding to kit out their workspaces so that they can deal with this issue. But in terms of things that we can be doing as a council more directly, we need to be ensuring that we are getting the drains clear. We're ensuring that as a district council we're sweeping the roads, and we're getting the county council to come out and clear drains, because quite often that's one of the simple things that we can be doing to help alleviate the flooding in our towns and villages. So I think there's a number of things that we can be doing as a council. But above all else, we need to be ensuring that we're protecting our community so that when we do have flooding, we're able to bounce back from it, and it's not causing the catastrophic impact to people's livelihoods that it's currently causing up and down the county.
Thank you. We go next to Councillor Emma Kersey.
Chairman, thank you, and Councillor Tucker, thank you for raising this subject, which, as you know, we both feel very passionately about. And as you've said, I have first-hand experience of this, as do generations of my family. And incidentally, Councillor Birch, I do actually have sandbags outside my house. They stay there all year round, but surprisingly, nobody would expect me to have sandbags outside my house, and that's because I live on one of the highest parts of the road that does flood. But the reason for that is because what isn't taken into account in so many situations is the runoff. And time again, we sit in planning committee and we are told that the area to be developed is in flood zone 1. So we can't take into account any flooding. But time and time again, and in reality, the day-to-day reality of it is, it's the runoff that causes substantial problems to so many properties. However, thank you for that diversion, Councillor Birch. I thought I'd better let you know about my sandbags. There's two key issues for me on this, is that I know Councillor Tucker has spoken very passionately in the past about dealing with the effects of flooding. For me, having seen it firsthand and the real real tragedy of the effects of flooding. Yes, it's right that we should have grants in place. Yes, it's right that we should have as much help in place as possible. And speaking about flood wardens, Sedgemoor really is one of the best examples, because it's the worst example, of where flood wardens work and how it works. A couple of years ago, I think on the Saturday morning, I spoke to Jem Teal in the early hours of the morning, and he knew he hadn't had to get involved with Sedgemoor at all, because it works like clockwork, but unfortunately it works like clockwork because it's always had to over many, many years. So 3 years ago, the flood siren went off for the very first time. That means that people have to leave their houses. If they don't leave their houses, it's under their own responsibility. The noise of the flood siren, it sounds exactly like an air raid siren, and it is the most haunting sound that you can hear, knowing that the flood is coming. So in the places that it's needed, flood wardens absolutely do their work, and they do that work organically. The rescue points are in place, and it literally works like clockwork. Sedgemoor, though, is a success story, and it's a success story for the reasons that Councillor Tucker has explained about the flood alleviation projects. Now, so it's two key things. Yes, we need to deal with the effects of flooding, but I would much rather that we look at flood prevention, because exactly as you say, the businesses that have the issues once they've been flooded, but the worst thing is somebody's home being flooded, and there's a large percentage of Sedgemoor that can't be insured because of the number of times that they've been flooded before. So the key thing for me is actually about flood prevention. Now, Sedgemoor is a success story because of the work that's been done further upstream to prevent the River Isbourne flooding. 3 years ago, the River Isbourne came to its highest height in Sedgemoor, but it did not flood one property. And that was thanks to all the flood alleviation work that had taken place upstream. Who has taken place with that flood alleviation, irrespective of whatever grants are available? It is the farmers. It's the landowners, it's the farmers. Now, I'm desperately concerned because we talk about flooding and we talk about grants, but if we're fundamentally looking at flood alleviation, there's so much work that goes on unnoticed. There's so many times that farmers are clearing ditches. There's so many times that farmers are doing all this grant work and non-grant work to actually make sure that the likes of the River Isbourne and Sedgemoor do not flood, even though we have record levels. So my bigger concern, I would say actually, with regards to what can we do at Wychavon, something that I think is mindful for all members and for officers, is that Councillor Tucker and I are on the email circulation from Jem Teal, and Jem Teal for Wychavon, he works literally 24 hours a day, 7 days of the year, and he 7 days of the week even, and he is constantly, he works all those days as well, he is constantly updating with all the flood situations, and Councillor Tucker and I are the chosen ones to have all the information, but we are extremely lucky in Wychavon to have somebody as dedicated as Jem Teal is. Having said all of that, the key issue for me, as I said, is flood alleviation. Why are these successes happening? They're happening because of the farmers. What is the government doing? The government is trying to destroy farming and promote building on our green fields. So if you take away the farmers that do the flood alleviation, take away the control over that land, and you then build houses on it, then we go to a housing situation, flood zone 1, then the runoff, and we all know where that's going to end up. So I wholeheartedly welcome everything that Councillor Tucker wants to do, and anything that we do is proactive and progressive. But my overriding concern is that we currently have a government who want to destroy farming and build on our countryside.
Thank you. With 11 minutes left of this debate, we have 4 speakers before returning to the debate leader. So I'm going to give each of the 4 remaining people 2 minutes so that I can give 4 minutes to Councillor Charles Tucker.
I won't need as much as that.
Even better. So we go first to Councillor Angie Crump.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Kersey and what she has said. As a member of the ward member for Fladbury area and Charlton, we have exactly the same issues there, and we have a parish council member there that is absolutely fantastic, Roger Davis, who deals with all of these flood alleviation things as well. And Jem Teal is an absolute gem. Literally, it's in his name. He works so hard, and I know that recently he was actually on annual leave as well when he was doing all this work, so a big thank you to him. We really do appreciate him. Just wanted to say, with regard to, it was said earlier about getting your gullers cleared, get onto your county councillors, make sure that the work is being done. We had a situation in Middle Lane where this area was being flooded. All it needed was the gullers being cleared out and these houses stopped being flooded. So also looking at things like the rain is biblical at times, and they're looking at the stats are looking at the annual rainfall, not at the specific rainfalls that we're getting. So it is quite key. One thing that we are trying to look at is seeing if parish councils...
I'm afraid to ensure that all speakers get a chance to talk, if you can make the next point in 15 seconds, I can let you
Okay,
have it.
really quickly. Parish councils, if they can be involved with road closures, purely because roads need to be closed quicker, and I know Jem's trying to do this, but we've got a lot of red tape to get through, but it's certainly an area that we'd like to look at. I know Councillor Hardman's shaking his head at me.
That seemed like a good place to improve anywhere we can cut down red tape. Councillor Julie Tucker.
Yes, I think there's another area as well. If we're talking about prevention, Wychavon has got various things in its Intelligently Green plan to do with natural developments, and because there is so much tarmac around these days, the more planting we can do, the more we can, particularly on river and brook edges, where we can plant things that stop slippage into brooks, rivers. All of that can contribute to preventing flooding. So I think we need to consider that as well in terms of this. Thank you.
Thank you. This takes us next on to Councillor Dan Boatright.
I'll be quick. Back in October 2019, when we had quite significant flooding in Pershore, someone from Severn Trent turned around and said to me, everyone around here thinks they're a drainage engineer. To which I responded, yeah, we pretty much are, because this is what we have to do to make sure our houses don't flood. And we actually do have a huge amount of lived experience in this area, and it does go back generations. And I think it is important that we try to get that written down, because the number of times I still hear people saying things where I live, and I'm thinking, we really need to know that. But people also need to think about what we do now, and education on this is really important. I get a lot of people asking about why we don't dredge anymore and don't understand modern practices and why we don't do these things and why Tewkesbury are a lot happier that we don't. I've really got to back up what Beverly has said about the who owns what and the ping pong, because county, district, Severn Trent, we need to start mapping the assets, and that map needs to be shared. I know county have started this process, but it does need to be more collaborative, and everything we can do to push that would be great. But we also do have a responsibility when it comes to road sweeping, and it's a huge issue, mud blocking drains, and we do need to prioritise this as a council. I know it's been pushed back because of staffing. But we do also need to fix older infrastructure, and this is something where we might not have the money right now, but at least if we make a list, we can then go through that list and actually start looking at how we get that money later. And I can't help but mention it, but of course, the number of times I get asked, is Eckington Bridge open? And finally, we just need to calculate rainfall better, because at the moment we're using average rainfall when it comes to development, and that's a huge problem because it's not average anymore. And actually, this is something where if we could really push back on the government on this one and start saying, look, we do actually need to start looking at the extreme rainfall we're getting, because I think a lot of developers are actually aiming for 750 millimetres of rainfall per year. That's what Andrew Fell told me, so I'm throwing him under the bus for that one. But the last 2 years, it's been 1,000 millimetres, and that is a huge problem, because how do you actually deal with that? And I'm done.
That was perfectly timed, I will say, for 2 minutes. Councillor Adrian Harden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Yes, I mean, one of the troubles, of course, is that every flood is different, in my experience. Often the causes are slightly changed because somebody has done something. And the issue of runoff, I think, is becoming a bigger issue as time goes by. Most farmers will help if you explain what the problem they're causing downstream is, I have found. But I still think that we need a process or a legal mechanism to make farmers put ditches in if they are overgrown and have been removed. I've got a couple of examples of that. I think it's very much a mixed picture across the parishes in regard to flood wardens and their roles. I mean, some parishes are extremely active in this. Breedon, for instance, is not particularly active, rather strangely. But I would, just emphasise that two things. I think a lot has been done since 2007, 2010, and I can list all the other floods. I do think the position is better because we have used mitigation and adaptation. But I do think that we need a capital fund for people to draw on. And I also think that we need to remind our parish councils that they do have parish lengthsmen paid by the county council, and it is vital that they keep on at the maintenance.
Thank you. And this takes us even better than perfect. You were 1 minute 30. This takes us back to Councillor Charles Tucker for a final word.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all members who have participated in this discussion. I think it's very clear that the whole Council understands much more about the difficulties of flooding, the likelihood of flooding, the increase in frequencies that we're getting, the increases in intensity that we're getting, and critically, the impact that it does have on our communities. It is one of the most life-changing impacts that there can be, and I'm sure members here realise that, I know. I did include reference in the motion to the potential possibilities for practical approaches to improve our activity in regard to flood management. And I would just like members to take those on board and hopefully cogitate over them, think about them, and hopefully, I won't say regurgitate, but bring them back again when it comes to the budget time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for attending. It's been an excellent meeting. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a wonderful New Year, and that you'll join us for a mince pie and a glass.